Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Julie, or you can call me Jules if you want. That is my preferred nickname. I use they/them pronouns, and I'm a non-binary and autistic therapist that also makes YouTube videos about topics such as mental health, makeup, as well as music, and along with mental health, of course, neurodiversity. Today is going to be a get ready with me. I am not doing a full face of makeup. Today, my routine on Fridays is that I usually, after lunch, go to see my partner. He's still working, so I'll go to my cousin's house, hang with her cats for a little bit, and then I will go spend the evening with my partner. So I often think about, if I'm gonna put all this makeup on, I'm going to have to take it off later, and that's gonna be extra things for me to pack if I wear false lashes or foundation, and I really am wearing less foundation lately. So there's a few topics that we're gonna talk about in our video today. One is about my career, and the other is about OCD, my OCD in particular. And if I make it, I think the last one is going to be about the concept of community and some problems that are going on in the communities I'm in general that I'm really not happy about. Without further ado, as I do my eyebrows here, I am just going in with an Anastasia brow powder duo in taupe. I can't even remember when I last got this, and I'm going to use the darker shade because if I use the taupe color, which I do sometimes, it'll take me way too long to fill in my brows, and you all will be bored, and so will I. So as you noticed in my introduction, if you've been here a while, I was having a different introduction and saying I was a therapist, I was no longer a therapist. And that was true. I was out of work for 4.5 months. And that was planned. As I talked about in a previous video, I needed to take a break from working in general and the mental health field and find a job that better suited my needs. And for context, I am a pre-licensed clinician, so what that means, if you don't know, is that I have a master's degree, I have years of clinical experience and did some of my postgraduate hours, but you have to do a certain amount of postgraduate hours, pass a test, and fill out a licensure application before you can independently practice. Like if I wanted to own my own therapy practice right now, in my state at least, I would not be able to, unfortunately. And that is something I want to do in the future, so that is why I am going back to the field to pursue getting my independent counseling license. So of course, just like with my previous employer, I'm not going to come on here and say where I work or talk about them, good, bad, or indifferent. That's not really the point. If you want to look me up online, you can probably find that out on your own. I get it. I get curious about that kind of stuff too. So go ahead, whatever. I previously worked for a telehealth company that was a group practice setting, and now I work for a group practice setting. They have telehealth, and that's what I'll be doing. I am a full remote person, but they also have in-person offices, and they are not a giant company. They're only in the state that I live in, and I'm really excited to work there. So I got a job. That's my big announcement, that I am returning to the field. I'm all set up to go. I even have like 10 intakes booked for next week. It's definitely going to be busy, and I'm excited, and I'm definitely also nervous because in going back to talking about routine, and if you're autistic, you know this, changing routines is hard, especially for me. And grieving the loss of the routine that I had is a challenge, because I really loved my routine from before, you know, getting up early and making breakfast for me and my dad and I would go for a walk together, and I'd do my physical therapy exercises. And it's like, you know, if my morning client cancels, I can still have that routine. It doesn't have to be fully gone. But I am going to have to make tweaks and do some of those things later in the day. And I know for other people that might not be a big deal, but for me, it definitely is. So I am nervous about the changes to my lifestyle. However, I accepted a part-time position, and that's why it took me so long to find a job, because certain places would only take people full-time, certain places would only take people in person. And if you watched my video about my neuropsych, the point of me getting a psych eval and getting an autism diagnosis was that I needed work accommodations. And so the nice thing about working part-time and remote is that work accommodations are just automatically built in, And that is really helpful. So I don't even have to say, hey, I need this, I need that, right? Like I would if I was working in person or expected to see 25 plus people a week, which is full-time in therapy world because we do a lot behind the scenes. So I signed a contract to work at my company for a year and see 12 people a week, which in therapy world means I'll be booking about 15. I might book a little more eventually as I get settled, but I think that's going to be more than enough for me to manage and provide quality care to my clients. I'm looking forward to it, but there's a lot that I'm nervous about. And especially being someone who's neurodivergent, just navigating all the social contexts, not only with clients, but with colleagues and supervisors, is definitely something that is a challenge for me. I'm back and I put eyebrow gel on and also prime my eyes and curled my lashes. Not that curling my lashes doesn't really do anything to them. I don't know that I even do it right. That's something I should or would like to research in my spare time. I, of all palettes, I'm using the first makeup palette I ever bought, Modern Renaissance. If you're seeing this, you're like, wow, you're old. I know. I know this palette is old, but I really like using old palettes and just using up what is there. So I think that topic 1, I'm pretty much done talking about. Just to disclose, if you find this video and you end up being a current client and you're like, oh my gosh, are they gonna talk about me? No. Confidentiality is super important, and I would never come on here and talk about a case. We sign an oath, we could get in a lot of legal trouble, but beyond that, like morally, I would never do that. So no, I'm not gonna come on here and be like, Janice is 32 and blah, 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 and give like protected health information. So, and that is a hard thing because not for clients, but people who follow me might be like, oh, I really want to know what you do and know about your clientele. And I can give you general stuff, right? Like not about my actual clients themselves, but about general populations I work with. I can tell you that now. I'll tell you that now because this isn't about people coming in. This is about, you know, population I worked with before and who I seek to work with moving forward. So my main specialty as a therapist is providing neurodiversity affirming care. Often I get asked, what the heck is that? Especially by other therapists because they think, oh, like, aren't there trainings for that? And sure, yeah, there's some, but some are more affirming than others. A lot of therapists out there have found out about the whole neurodiversity movement and paradigm, and they've kind of capitalized on that, and they're not neurodivergent themselves, and then they're leading these trainings where they're teaching people things that are wrong and like not aligned with the neurodiversity movement. So it's interesting. How I came to find my specialty was through social media and online communities, which luckily at my new job, people are like, oh, yay, cool. But obviously that isn't the typical path for a lot of therapists. They tend to do trainings or work in intensive settings with various populations. And my internship was with teens in a school setting, and I don't work with children or teens anymore. I loved working with kids, but it was really hard as a therapist. So I work with adults, and I provide neurodiversity affirming care, which means that I love working with people who are autistic or ADHD or are questioning those things and are looking to self-realize or self-identify with those things or to pursue formal diagnosis and learn more about that. I, of course, can't be the one to give out those diagnoses in my state. Unfortunately, it has to be through a psychologist. But I have a very different view of therapy and mental health care in general than what the pathology paradigm has to offer, even if I have to do my notes that way or certain clients want that care. Like, I'm not going to argue with a client who feels differently than me. That's not why I'm there to like impose my views on other people. But ideally, I do like to work with people who are open to this neurodiversity movement and how I practice. And just to say, I really don't like when I say like, oh, I'm neurodivergent from or with autism and ADHD, because people think that neurodivergent is a term that means autistic or ADHD and sometimes learning disabilities, but neurodivergent can be innate or acquired neurodivergence. So it can actually be either, and it's important that we affirm anyone who wants to identify as neurodivergent, because neurodivergent isn't a medical model label. So it's not up to me as a therapist to say to a client, oh, you're neurodivergent. I could have a client who's autistic who's like, I don't want that label, I'm just autistic, or I have ASD, and I'm not gonna sit there and argue with them about that just because I might feel differently and I identify as neurodivergent, because that is something that's very personal for somebody to go through. People say like, oh, but you provide like LGBT affirming care too. Well, yes, every form of care that I care about in therapy aligns with the neurodiversity movement and neurodiversity affirming practice. Being involved in fat liberation and anti-racism and being health at every size informed and a weight inclusive provider and anti-diet is important to me. I work with EDS. I'm not going to say the whole word because algorithms on social media get mad at me every time I do. Those often co-occur, as we know, in neurodivergent populations. Borderline personality disorder also often co-occurs, and you know BPD is very near and dear to my heart as someone who's been diagnosed before. So I also, of course, work with BPD, and I cannot stand the stigma around it, and that's why it's just so important to me to be open to working with populations that other therapists may not be. If I'm going to be neurodiversity affirming, I need to be intersectional in how I provide care to people. Obviously, if I'm working with neurodivergent people, I'm likely working with LGBT and specifically trans, non-binary, and gender conforming folks. And I want to make sure I'm competent in that. So the reason I accepted this job is because I asked them if they had someone who specialized in autism and LGBT who could supervise me, and they did. And so I'm really, really excited about that, to have someone who can support me on these cases. And I already met my supervisor and they're really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. And I info dumped. I said I wasn't going to talk about the job any longer. So I'm going to put my eyeliner on and clean this up because it looks like mud. And then I will switch topics. Hey, I know, I gotta clean up under here, which brings me to my next topic, which is OCD. So as you know, if you watched my previous video about getting a formal autism diagnosis, I finally got formally diagnosed with OCD, and I've lived with it for most of my life. And my psychologist also confirmed that's been going on for a really long time, unidentified. And the reason for that is a lot of therapists get really confused about the difference between anxiety and OCD, and they don't really understand that there's subtypes of OCD. They're used to like people with contamination OCD, so if they don't see that, or they don't see someone with like a lot of perfectionism, often they'll just say, oh, it's just anxiety, oh, you just have anxiety. But we know anxiety and OCD often co-occur. We know trauma can exacerbate OCD for people, but of course it's not always at the root. Everyone's situation is different. I didn't think that I had OCD, or I didn't want to self-diagnose it, even though it's very common in my family. And there were times I was like, okay, I have OCD. And there were times like, no, everyone has debilitating intrusive thoughts when they're stressed out. And everyone has intrusive thoughts, whether they have OCD or not. It's about the level of distress. Not that I'm a fan of the DSM and all of that. But yeah, I feel like I had some imposter syndrome about having OCD. And that was really annoying for me because that left me without getting treatment for it or really having support. And that is because I follow a lot of people or therapists who specialize in OCD, and they're very pathology paradigm focused. And I see this in neurodivergent affirming spaces too, that one time I had a therapist who was into ND affirming stuff that I went to a consult with, and even she was like, well, I provide non-pathologizing care, but not with OCD. And I'm just like, all right, I get that ERP helps a lot of people with OCD, and I'm not gonna say that it isn't helpful or crucial, but I also am involved in the psych survivor community, and they have spoken up about how ERP has been harmful for them, and they prefer using harm reduction strategies to manage their OCD, and harm reduction in mental health care is really important, as is listening to people in the community and listening to their lived experience. I am listening to that, and I think I do a lot of harm reduction for my own OCD in my life, but OCD can be really distressing for me, but there are parts of it that protect me and help me. And I know that's really hard for people to hear who are completely debilitated by their OCD. I am not invalidating you. You deserve help and care, and whatever you need. Your lived experience is going to be different than mine because you're your own person, and that's okay. But I've been really debilitated by my OCD lately. Doing my under eyes now. Yeah, so because I'm starting a new job, my OCD is kicking up because I am nervous, and I did a little bit of IFS work, internal family systems, around my OCD when I was with my previous therapist. That's a life update too. I got a new therapist and I didn't talk about that, but that's okay. I have a new therapist and I like them. So internal family systems teaches you that there are many parts to who you are so that you can learn to hold space for them and what they need. And I learned through that OCD works really, really, really hard to keep me safe. So my OCD is flaring up right now because is terrified that something bad is going to happen and I'm going to make a mistake and, you know, I'm going to get let go from my job, or a client's going to complain about me and I'm going to get in trouble, and these are things that, you know, I only have control over showing up and doing the best I can and being as kind of a person in my role as I can be. And not every client's going to be for me, and I'm not going to be for every client. And that is totally fine. And I always talk about that in intakes too, that like, you don't have to come back if I don't feel like the right fit. Just even if you're like, oh yay, ND affirming care, oh yay, I want a neurodivergent non-binary therapist, but you meet me and you're like, them, ugh. That's okay. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like my approach. And that is all right. I just don't want to get in trouble, and I am always terrified about that. So my OCD is just making up all these hypotheses and things. And then yesterday when I was trying to get organized for work and prepare some things, I noticed some checking compulsions coming in, and it was getting really overwhelming. And why I thought to talk about this topic when I noticed my makeup was kind of messy is because I have perfectionism OCD. And I think there's a difference between someone who just can be a perfectionist like in personality and someone who really does have OCD, and there's intrusive thoughts and compulsions leading the show. And I think perfectionism is also a way that we try to seek control and protect ourselves, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's really, really hard to break out of. Like, I will watch this video back and my OCD will have a lot to say about it, and the lighting and how I'm not professional and how there's better makeup artists out there, but I know that I do my channel for me and for other people out there who might relate to me and my content, and I don't need to be a superstar. This is not my job. I do this as a hobby and for fun and to affirm myself. So if you're out there and you're struggling with OCD, I feel for you so much, and I'm so sorry if you didn't get a diagnosis till later in life. I think late diagnosis comes with a lot of things, not just autism and ADHD, and it's important we talk about that and get people the supports that they need. I think we're gonna make it to our final topic. I'm done with my first two. Examples of communities that I personally am in on social media are autism / neurodiversity affirming community spaces, maybe a little bit of the disability community. Y'all may know I used to be part of scene, pop punk, metalcore, whatever, Twitter. I'm no longer part of that community, but I still have online friends and mutuals who are, so maybe I dabble in that a bit from the outskirts. A lot of people, especially in the autistic community, have been talking about a lot of divisiveness in the community around ABA. Black autistic advocates, and especially those who are parents, have been speaking up about this a lot, but it's not that they're pro ABA or they don't agree that ABA causes harm and it is a major systemic issue that we need to work through. It's that the systems that are in place are working exactly as they need to keep us all oppressed, but especially Black folks, because we don't have enough services outside of ABA. And there's always an argument from white autistic people, well, you can get speech, well, you can get OT. There's ABA in those. There's ABA in schools. There's ABA in outpatient therapy for adults. Behaviorism is in everything, sprinkled in everything. And even though Black advocates that are autistic have spoken out about this, white people in autistic communities are silencing them a lot. And many are still not listening. And obviously that is a form of racism, and that is a problem. And we really need to hold space for different perspectives in the community without getting triggered and being like, this person isn't hearing that I went through ABA and I suffered and I have trauma from that, because no one is trying to take that away from you. No one is saying that doesn't happen and gaslighting your experience. Okay, I can't say no one, because there are people out there like who say, oh, my kid's in it and it's great. I don't know why, that's not how they're supposed to do ABA. I get that. There is nuance to what I just said. I can't say no one because that's kind of like an all or nothing thinking, but that's not what these advocates are saying. They're saying that we're not being intersectional enough when we just make blanket statements about ABA instead of saying, what can we do as a community to provide other supports and resources for each other and advocate for policy to change so that the system can change. And I don't know if in our lifetime we will see systems change, which is devastating to think about. I know, and I hate to even say it. It's sickening to think about. But yeah, there's a lot of problems around that. There's also a lot of problems about people who prefer person with language instead of identity first language, because even though I prefer identity first language, occasionally I'll be like, yeah, I have autism. And that's because like in the real world, not that social media isn't the real world, but when like you go out into the in-person world, if I say to someone I'm autistic, sometimes they're like, don't say that about yourself. Or they're like, why are you doing that? And so I have to be in the right space to say that to someone who isn't going to go on that whole spiel with me. So often I will just say I have autism. And that's because for me, being autistic is a huge integral part to my identity, core, beliefs, values, needs, preferences, blah, and I'm disabled because I'm autistic. And so I think that it's really important that we don't pick at people who are autistic or have kids who are autistic and their kids say, I don't want to say I'm autistic, mommy, daddy, whoever. I want to say I have autism, or I want to say I have ASD. And even though that may make some people feel uncomfortable, it isn't your responsibility to tell people that they can and can't identify in a certain way or speak about themselves in a certain way that is different from you. Because we're all in the same community and we need to hold space for different perspectives. Like, just because I say I'm autistic, if I have a client come in and they're like, I'm ASD, I have autism, and I'm like, how does that feel to say? Is that affirming for you? Is that what you're comfortable with? And then they say yes and explain why. What am I gonna sit there and challenge them on that for? That is not why I'm there. I'm there to affirm who they are and how they want to describe who they are. It's similar to an LGBT. Some people might want to say I'm bi, I'm pan, and other people might want to just say I'm queer, or I don't want to label at all. And labels stress me the heck out, right? Just like I said before, someone who's autistic might technically be neurodivergent, but it's not our job to say you're neurodivergent because they might not want that label or any part of the neurodiversity paradigm and movement. And even though it's really an important movement, it's not up to us to tell them what to do. And what bothers me is that we as a community are autistic. So we have a huge desire for autonomy and to have control and sameness and predictability in our lives. And we're shattering all of that for other autistic people because we don't like that they don't live the way we live or feel or believe the way that we do. And that doesn't build community. It divides it and it causes harm. And that is a huge problem that we're facing in the autistic community right now. So I'm very curious of your thoughts about it. My makeup look is about done. I will, for the sake of ending this video, put like a lip tint on or something, but I do not want to line my lips and wear lipstick today. My two unrelated final thoughts are this lip tint from Colourpop's called Always Right, and it makes me laugh because I'm like, that's right, I'm always right. There's no way I'm always right, but I do say that as a joke sometimes. Also, everyone recommended this to me because this was the mascara I was using before. It's no longer cruelty-free and it's discontinued from Wet n Wild and I loved it, but it is gone and it's very sad. So I use this now on my bottom lashes. Everyone said it's the best bottom lash mascara because it's the waterproof version of this one. However, I don't really love it. I mean, it looks nice, but it always just leaves a line of black and I get raccoon eyes, and the other one didn't do that because the point of it being waterproof is it shouldn't do that. It should be able to, you know, let me cry and do whatever I need to do, or just have my eyes water without that happening. And it's okay because like I'm not wearing foundation today, but when I am wearing foundation, it looks terrible. If you have an idea of a bottom lash mascara that is waterproof, that has a small wand, because that doesn't have a small wand, I am in the market. Being autistic, change is very hard for me. So I'm annoyed that a go-to product of mine is gone, is no longer cruelty-free. That is very, very aggravating for me. Hey, well, this isn't on perfectly, and too bad for OCD. You know what? I still deserve to make a video. I still deserve to talk and have a good time, and I can love makeup, and it can be a special interest without me being a damn makeup artist. So that's that. I might go in with a Q-tip and clean it up and do my outro though. So I will delay OCD for about 1 minute. Okay, so here is my finished makeup look. It's nothing special, but I'm gonna be nice to myself and say it is special because normally on Fridays I don't wear makeup at all, and I wanted to do something nice for myself. I wanted to finally film a YouTube video because it's been so long, and go figure, I was like, oh, I start work next Monday. I'll finally have the motivation and spoons to film a video, but the whole time I wasn't working, what did I make, like 1 or 2 videos? But you know what? I needed that time. I needed that downtime for myself to heal and get through things, and sorry if I've been talking loud this whole time. Wow, when I took these out, like, I talk really loud when I have them in, but these help me focus. I have such bad noise sensitivity. I would have just been jumping around this whole time, especially because my anxiety has been really high with all the life transitions going on. You know, I have a new therapist and I have a new job all at once, but I'm really grateful to still be on YouTube and making videos. I know I'm going to be really busy with work, but hopefully working in the field again and learning more will inspire me to make more content for you all. And if you have any video ideas or things that you want me to talk about that you're interested in, or maybe you thought of after hearing me speak today, I would love to hear your ideas. I'm always open. I mean, we know one of my most viral videos came from people telling me what to do in a comment section, so I'm cool with that. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel as well, and I will catch you all on the flip side. Bye, y'all.